Good morning. My name is John Webster, and I'm currently judge of the Jennings Circuit Court. I was elected to this position in November of 1996, took office January 1 of 1997. I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about the Jennings County Courthouse, a grand old building in our county, and primarily some things about the inside of the circuit courtroom where we're standing right now. This is actually the third courthouse that Jennings County has had. The one that we're standing in, construction began in 1857 and concluded, we're told, in about 1860. The original architect on the building was a man by the name of Isaac Hogston, and the courthouse was built by a contractor by the name of Samuel Reed, whose picture hangs on the first floor of this building. The construction cost for this building back in the 1860s was $26,375. This courthouse is said to be of the Italianate style. It has a twin, actually, in Morgan County, Indiana, that looks much like it. The building has withstood two tornadoes, one of which occurred in 1917, which damaged a lot of the landscaping around the building, not so much the building itself. A second tornado struck Vernon in 1932, and the building suffered some minor damage. The building has been remodeled two times. Since it was originally built in the 1860s. It was remodeled in 1953 and again in 1983. A clock was added to the courthouse tower approximately 1985, and that clock has a carillon in it which plays chimes throughout the day. The courthouse at one time had a jail on the northwest corner of the building, which was made of some flat iron, and prisoners were held there temporarily until they could be brought up to court. That was actually removed from the building years later. There has been, I'm told from reading the history of this building, that there has been one public hanging on the lawn of the courthouse, which drew a great number of spectators. Obviously, that's the only time that was ever done that we are aware of. Notable visitors to the courthouse, 1971, perhaps the most famous visitor was Richard Nixon. Richard Nixon came to the courthouse to speak, to dedicate a historical plaque for his mother, Hannah Milhouse Nixon, in the Butlerville area. I also have read that Henry Ward Beecher visited the courthouse back in the 1860s to speak on some issues regarding slavery and abolishment of slavery. There are some interesting features inside the courtroom which I'd like to point out to you. Over to my right is a Seth Thomas clock, which was purchased by Judge Berkshire. That was done in 1878, I believe, and that clock still is here today and it still functions. It has to be wound each day, and it hangs over on the wall on the north side of the courtroom. Also of great interest in this courtroom, and off to the left, are three WPA paintings from 1935. WPA paintings were, of course, painted during that period of time around the Depression. Those paintings have hung in the courthouse since then. During remodeling in the 1980s, the pictures were taken down and apparently put in a storage closet where they got wet and were damaged, but they weren't damaged beyond use, and they were hung back on the wall in their original state with that damage that occurred. Inside the courtroom itself, there is some original woodwork, which I am told came from sassafras and hickory trees cut from the surrounding woods. The original bar that separates the jury box from the courtroom is the original wood, as is the gate which separates the gallery from the courtroom. Those are the original woods. If you look at those, very distinctive from the new wood, which was added when the courthouse was remodeled in 1983. The courtroom, from the 50s until the 80s, the courthouse had a third floor in it. It was about halfway up the windows, and the prosecutor and the surveyor occupied offices up on that third floor. When the courthouse was remodeled the most recent time, in 1983 or 84, they took the fake third floor out and restored the building and the courtroom that you're looking at today to its original condition, its original configuration. On the back wall of the courtroom are pictures of judges who served in the Jennings Circuit Court, at least those that we could find. Several of those judges served a joint circuit. They served both Jennings and Scott County. Judge Huff being the last judge to serve on a joint circuit. The chairs, which are in the jury box, at least the wooden part of the chair, are original. Needless to say, the fabric parts have been replaced through the years, but the wooden structure of those chairs are original from their original purchase back in the 1800s. The courthouse is, the foundation of the courthouse is made from limestone, which I am told from reading various accounts of the building of the courthouse came from local quarries, and of course was hauled here on a horse and buggy, and that limestone foundation is still in use today. The walls are, many of the walls are solid rock covered with original plaster, and if you ever try to drill into those walls, it's quite an undertaking to try to get through those even to hang a picture. Not like the drywall that we use today. The courthouse has a tunnel which runs from the courthouse itself down to what used to be the county jail. That tunnel was used to bring prisoners up in the early days, especially during bad weather. That tunnel is still usable, but we don't use it to bring prisoners up anymore because the jail that was there is not there anymore. Now at the end of that tunnel there are some mechanical features that run the courthouse, the heating and cooling units, but that tunnel is still there. I'm told that the courthouse was a stopping point for the Underground Railroad back in the days of slavery, and on the exterior of the courthouse there is a marking which appears to be a flower, which was apparently a symbol to those fleeing slavery that this was a safe stop for those on their way through the Underground Railroad system. One final feature of the circuit courtroom itself is the tin ceiling, which is overhead. I'm told that's the original ceiling that had to go through some serious renovation work when the courthouse was last remodeled in the mid-80s. But for the most part, that's the original tin ceiling. There's a catwalk up above there that is accessible to go up and change the lighting. It's a very narrow catwalk and quite a harrowing experience to be up there walking around. One last important historical feature of the courthouse is that in 1921, I believe that the Jennings County Courthouse was the site of the first all-women jury in the United States. And there's a picture of that group of women that hangs in the jury room. In the 1990s and perhaps early 2000s, we had another all-woman jury, which of course these days isn't near the deal it was back in 1921. So also a historical tidbit about our courthouse. Thank you for your interest in the Jennings County Courthouse. When court is not in session, members of the public are free to come through the courthouse, visit it, walk through it, including the courtrooms. It's open through the week, 5 days a week from 8 to 4. So if you're ever in Vernon and want to stop by and go through our courthouse, feel free to do so. If court's not in session, you're welcome to stroll through the courtroom and see what courtrooms looked like back in the 1860s.